Yeah, is this our 10th episode? Why do I even try?
No, how
Okay,
you keeping track of that shit?
I'm not though.
Oh,
That's the problem.
oh, okay,
So yeah, episode. Let's just say it's 10, and then I'll find out later how many I'm off.
okay.
Uh,
So, anyways,
I'm starting.
well,
So the my first question. So last week was like try not to talk about Persona and Trails.
yeah,
This
mhm,
week is just fuck it. We're just going straight into that.
that's your plan.
So question one, we're ranking the fucking arcs in Cold Steel 1.
Okay,
There's six of them. Let's
all right. So,
go.
okay. Let's see if I can remember. I put this together in my head earlier. My
Do you want to go
first,
best to worst or worst to best?
I was thinking about best to worst.
Okay.
So my number one, I think, is actually going to be Berahard, which is,
Okay.
I believe, the second one.
Yep.
I like that one. I like the major character moments with Jusis and Machias. I feel like that it's like super early on, but it has notable character growth, and I like that. So that's my number one. Are we going to my number two now, or are you doing number one?
Uh. Hmm.
How are we organizing this? All right, fuck it. We'll go to my number two.
Okay.
My number two is going to be Legram or Legrand or however the fuck you pronounce it.
Legram.
Again, Legram.
Well,
However the
I
fuck.
just it's not an N at the end, so.
I
But
like that one.
yeah, you do three and then I'll do three.
Okay. Yeah, I like the you know spooky, mystical castle on an island bit. It just feels unique and interesting and all that stuff. And then my third one, I think, is just going to be Roar because it has the most stuff going on. It's not as just go through the motions, but there's actually like major plot development on that one more than some of the others, I think. So that's going to be my one through three.
Okay, my number one is Legram.
Okay.
I like the music for the place. I like the
Mm.
aesthetic of the place,
Yeah.
but mostly Legram and Roar are my two really that stand out above all the others far and away
Okay.
because they're the two where I feel like the game strikes the best balance between the talky bits and the exploring fighting bits.
Yeah.
So I like Legram. The structure of Legram is great because there's not a whole lot of running around to talk to all the NPCs.
Yeah. There's not.
It's just a straight shot from the mansion down and then out. There's not a
Okay.
whole lot of NPCs to talk to, but the ones that are there are interesting because it's not a very big city.
Okay.
You get to go out on the road, you get to fight, you get to go into the castle, which is a pretty long fight.
Hmm.
You get the Nosferatu fight, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
It's just the best arc, I think, in terms of just balancing that. And you also, story wise, get to see Reen finally explain his Super Saiyan mode.
Okay. You do. Yeah.
So, in that sense, and you also get introduced to some of the characters that will go on to be more plot relevant in the second, like Toval and the Viscount.
And the Viscount and all that. Okay.
Yeah. So, it's just a great chapter. It's concise, it doesn't waste a whole lot of time, and everything is
Okay.
balanced well, and it has some of the best music in the game.
All right. I won't argue with any of that.
And my second is Rower, and it's really, really close. And it's
Yeah. It is for me too. They're pretty neck and neck.
yeah, the only reason Legram really beats out Rower, honestly, is it just comes down to I like the Legram theme better than Rower's.
And I do too. I like the little village by the lake aesthetic better than the industrial city.
Yeah, both aesthetically and I was talking about just the music.
Okay.
I actually like the accordion better
Okay.
than Rower's, but otherwise, again, I think it. It's paced the best of all of them, or better than most of them. The
Okay.
dungeons are pretty interesting.
All right.
Sorry, I
Eh,
coughed there.
really?
But anyway, yeah, same thing. Very close, very
Hmm.
plot relevant.
Yeah.
By that point, you've got things down. You
I would hope so. That's the last chapter.
Well, what I mean is a
I know
lot
what
of
you
the
mean.
game is setting up.
It is.
So what I like about Legram and Rower in particular is that rather than doing what you do in the first few chapters of, assembling the crew, blah blah whatever.
It feels like you're finally starting to move on from setup into relevant story.
Well, that and it's just the crew knows each other. It's the reason my number three, and this is kind of spoilers, but number three is Nord.
Okay.
The reason those are my three tops, I think,
Hmm.
is because there's not that assembling the team
I get
vibe.
that. I get
It's
that. You're
it's
already a team, so you're just ready to go, and you're not still learning the cast.
well that, and you can really dig into that next layer of learning the cast
Okay.
because this comes from like watching a lot of shows and stuff where okay, you assemble the team, that's the story because you always have to start at the beginning.
Yeah.
But a lot of shows don't necessarily go on to the end,
Oh,
especially in
okay.
like anime or whatever.
Yeah.
So you don't usually get a chance to really dig deep in to it's that same story. Everybody learns how to work together. Everybody learns how to work together. Okay, okay, okay. But what I want to know is what after.
After they all know each other and work together, what do they do together?
Yeah, and that's where I like Roar, Legram, and Nord because everybody mostly gets along. So you
That
just get
makes
them more really personal stories because they already have gotten past that surface level mistrust.
that makes sense.
In Legram, you get Reen and Elisa, or Reen and Laura doing the
Hmm.
swordsman thing. In
Yeah.
Rower, you get the great scene with Elisa and Reen in the house,
Hmm.
and then Fee following Reen as a bodyguard, which I think is adorable. And then in the third one, I really like Gaius.
Yeah.
So getting to see his home and getting to see again, this is when Elisa starts opening up more because you've already gotten past the awkwardness of the first chapter.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are my top three, and that's kind of why.
That makes sense. That makes sense. I get all that. All right.
So go on to your
Um,
next three.
Move on to my number four. I think I'm gonna go with Heimdall, the big one in the capital.
Have you?
Which, what?
You said you're playing with Japanese voices, right?
Yeah.
Are you paying attention to how they pronounce things, or are you just like in one ear and out the other?
Uh, Bit of both.
Okay, I just ask because I don't play with voices,
Yeah.
so I just have. To me, it's always been like Heimdallar. I have no clue if that's fucking right. Like, I could be totally wrong on this. It's just
I It's a bit of both. I like Heimdall. That just even if they said Heimdaller, Heimdall just is what feels natural to me.
okay.
But
And
it's
again, this is just me. Like, I made up my own pronunciations because I don't have voices.
yeah, I get that. But yeah, that's my number four because even though it is early on, I feel like that's where the terrorist group starts making their major moves. It's where you get the first little bit of what the bigger mystery and the bigger bad guys are. You get introduced to pretty much the whole royal family, to Reen's sister, to bunch of characters all right there. I feel like it's for as early as it is, it's a big story heavy chapter with a lot of characters, which again, I like. And then you have the great moments with Laura and V. So,
It's funny you say as early as it is, even though that's the latter half of the game.
yeah, but barely. I mean, it is, but either way, that's my number four.
Okay.
For 5, I think I'm gonna go with Nord. I like Nord. It's big, and I get that it's plains, but it feels plain, and it
Yeah,
feels like a lot of empty space, and
and that's the
it's
reason for me that it's not up there with Roar and Legram.
mm,
It doesn't have that conciseness.
it doesn't. I get what they were going for, and I like what they were going for, and it fits the feeling of it. This big, expansive, open area, ride horses with the nice, majestic, wind music flowing, and it's a great look, but it's not a great play.
Yeah, I've actually loved that song. That is my favorite song in the whole game,
I love that song. It's a fucking great song,
and I
but
have known about it since before the game was even localized.
but yeah, I don't like it as I don't like playing it as much as I like looking at it, if
Yeah,
that makes sense.
yeah, and I
And then,
agree wholeheartedly. It's definitely
mm,
a weak point.
and then my number 6 is gonna be fucking the first one, whose name I don't even remember.
Selvig,
Cause Celtic, yeah, because it's the first one. It's the most setup-y,
nothing,
talking-iest.
yeah, nothing of any major import happens.
Exactly. I mean, it's the first chapter. It's the first chapter.
It's the last for me too, for pretty much the same reason.
Yeah, but I think that's gonna be my 4, 5, and 6.
Okay, so my number four, I'm gonna go ahead and say Bearheart,
Okay.
and the reason it beats out Heimdallr for me
hmm
is it
It,
comes down to just the fact that Bearheart is 4 screens
it
of
feels bigger.
town.
It's
Yeah,
like even
and the
the,
capital is 6, and the capital does not convey,
the size and the scope and the cohesiveness of the city itself.
yeah, of the massiveness, because this is supposed to just be like one half of the capital.
Yeah,
But because it's so broken up into all these little tiny sections that you
it doesn't
travel
feel
to
that.
by train in particular,
hmm
rather than feeling big, it actually feels
It doesn't feel
small.
like one big city.
Yeah, it feels like a bunch
Mhm.
of small disjointed places.
No, I completely agree with that, and Berahard manages to actually fix that by having you one screen leads right into the next, so it feels like 4 connected screens to make a big area.
Yeah, even though it's a riot, if you actually like stop and think about it, they
It
all get into a limo to go to the hotel that's like 2 feet away. It doesn't make sense if you stop to think about it, but when you don't think about it, it at least works.
yeah.
It's it's funny. I like it. But also, I don't like in Heimdallr the dungeons that much.
Okay.
It's exclusively narrow sewers.
Yeah, it is. It is, and that is
Bearheart at least had the highway, the canyon, and nicer sewers.
gotta love nicer sewers.
And if you gotta run
Yeah.
through a sewer, you can either have old, shitty, rusted sewer
hmm
or new aqueduct.
True.
Like, just saying.
I mean, the thing I like about the Heimdall sewers though is they're not just sewer. It's not sewers. If you want to be like fucking pretentious about it, they're the maze of interconnected tunnels going beneath the. I mean, it's a sewer, but it's not a sewer.
And again, it's just another
The,
one of
the,
those things where it feels like they didn't quite capture,
what it was,
yeah, what they were trying to.
because the idea of this like series of tunnels underneath the city going from everywhere to everywhere, it's cool until you actually go do it and it's a sewer.
And I think part of this will get me slightly off topic, so I can not go down this if you want.
How far off topic? Go for it. I don't care. Do it.
I brought up again, details being, I don't know if I did it on the show, but details being what really sets apart, like what I really appreciate about Persona 5
Hmm.
is the amount of detail
Yeah.
into the world and the dungeons and whatnot. And there's some flat areas, but on the whole, each dungeon feels very dynamic.
Okay.
And that's where, going back to Cold Steel, it's a limitation of their budget. I know that. I'm aware of that. I'm not
Yeah.
dissing them for this. It is just an objective fact, though, that I think part of the problem is that the whole thing feels like just one repeated aesthetic.
Yeah.
Like if there was more change up to the sewer, like there was, like even in Eternal Sonata's sewer,
Hmm. Okay.
it's just very simplistic and then copy and pasted over and over and over.
Yeah, it is.
And
And
again,
that, I mean,
I'm not shitting on them for it. I get why it's there, and I don't think it's like the end all be all.
but it does do something
Yeah,
about just the enjoyment.
impacts the
Yeah,
experience. Let's go
it
with that word.
does. Not like a lot, not enough to make it suck, but enough to see it.
Yeah, I still prefer the areas in Cold Steel to something like the Blobs and Tales of Exilia. So,
Hmm. Okay.
and then of course Celtic, but
Yeah.
whatever.
And then Celtic, it's there. It's a thing. It exists.
And this is saving Cold Steel too. It's the first place you go, and it's just like whatever, fuck it.
Yeah, I get that. But all
Okay,
right.
next question. This one's yours.
You want to do the second one since mine's kind of like a couple of connected questions?
I do. I'm gonna pause the video really quickly though.
Okie dokie.
Okay, so question two that I had.
Okay.
How do you feel about silent protagonists?
Okay. Um, I like them if they fit mechanically. And what I mean by that is a silent protagonist to me is designed to be a player insert.
Yeah, self-insert.
So there's the word. So if the game is one where you make decisions and decisions matter and things can vary and shift, I'm okay with the silent protagonist because it lets me feel like I'm in there and I'm making decisions. Something Persona-ish, where the core of the game is deciding where you want to spend your time, what you want to do. It fits because I'm making those decisions. Compare that to Cold Steel, which I think would just be god awful with a silent protagonist, because it's a story of this character, not a story of what I would do if I was in the game, but we're just following this particular person and what they think and say and do. So I think it's a tool mechanically, and it just has to fit the rest of the mechanics in the game.
Okay.
Makes sense?
Yeah, it does,
Okay.
because I used to kind of think about along those lines, but my opinion on this has definitely changed because I just straight up don't like silent protagonists anymore. I think
Okay.
it robs a lot of the story's opportunity to really fully express itself and that character.
Okay.
Because if you take something like Persona, this is what I
Hmm.
meant by like diving straight into this.
Yeah.
They clearly have an idea already of the character's personality.
Yeah.
They bring so much to life through the character's expressions and actions, and that's great insofar as it really gives you an idea of the character.
Okay.
It's not so great insofar as at that point just let them fucking talk.
Okay.
Because I don't feel like the choices you make in really just about any JRPG justify a silent protagonist.
Okay.
I don't think if you had, and it's not just about Joker voicing his lines, but if he voiced his lines, nothing would be lost. Because realistically, you're just picking between two to three variants of more or less the same thing.
Okay.
You know, this isn't like a Western RPG, like a Bioware game,
Yeah.
where there's these totally crazy branching conversation paths.
Hmm.
You don't have that. So
No.
where's the problem in just actually,
Putting sound to the choices.
well, not only that, giving me a character. If you're gonna go so
Okay.
far as to define these traits of the character, then just go all the way and give me an actual character.
Okay, that makes sense.
Because I don't, and again, maybe this is just me, but I don't really want to self-insert anymore
Yeah,
because I don't feel like the characters reflect my ideologies anymore, no matter what.
that makes sense.
So if you're not going to reflect what I would actually do in the situation, just
Then
just
stop trying to make it be me.
yeah, just give me a fucking character then that has their own personality so that they can do what they would do in the situation that's set up by the personality you established.
Which I agree and I do prefer, which I think is why in general I do prefer those voiced or I guess written characters. I do prefer that because like you said, I like the characters with their own personality and everything. But I think those silent ones do have a place.
I think they have a place. I just don't think it's particularly well utilized in Jerkwagoos.
It, it's like because I know we've had the does it count, but thinking of Fire Emblem Three Houses specifically is a silent protagonist, and it works
But that has
somehow.
more of the branching
It does. It
stuff.
does.
I also
It,
think I could be wrong on this, but from what I gather, there's less characterization of the main character than
there
there is to
is.
something like Persona 5, especially 5.
There is, and that's why I'm saying it works in Fire Emblem. And I don't think a voiced character, I don't know if it would as much, but the basically personality-less insert of Fire Emblem feels natural.
And
So
that's all I'm
the silent protagonist feels natural in that situation.
and that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's all bad. I'm just saying I don't think most of the implementation that it's in it does anything.
That's fair.
Persona 5 especially drives me nuts because everybody loves Joker. Joker's great, but Joker is mostly a blank slate.
He is.
At this point, just give me my fucking sarcastic prick who just looks like Pottercoon during the day and then at night is the fabulous leader of the Phantom Thieves.
Why does he have to be a sarcastic prick?
Because that's just how I imagine him in my head.
But I don't.
And that's
And
where
maybe
it's like,
and
just.
maybe that maybe that's should he be silenced because we both like Joker even though we imagine him as completely different people?
And that to me
Or
is where the
should
breakdown comes in. Is it's like, it's too.
but we're both happy.
But I'm not
We
happy. That's the problem. I don't think
well,
anybody could say like, "Oh, who's your favorite RPG protagonist?" Oh, it's Joker. Oh, you mean the guy who doesn't have a fucking personality? Because we can
I mean,
sit here and debate it. I mean, he has some, but you get my point.
I do get your point, but
You basically tried to have
and
your cake and eat it too.
you are, but in some cases I'm wondering if that's bad necessarily because if Joker was at least in my head a sarcastic asshole, I don't know if I would like it as much, and I might just like the game less in general because of that. So does the fact that I can kind of put whatever personality I want onto him, is that bad? Is that bad that I have a different version of him and I like it because of that? It might not be as developed, but it's one that I like, as opposed to a really developed shitty one.
Well, I don't know. It depends on the personality that they gave him, but if they developed it well enough, you might find yourself liking it more in spite of the fact that it's not necessarily what you would have picked because it
Maybe.
can be developed and it can go through an arc and have that change.
Maybe. Yeah, you're right, and that is quite possible.
And that's what you really can't do with a silent protagonist is give him a really solid character arc
No,
that
you can't.
pulls you in and feels like the character is developed over the course because you're just supposed to be self-inserting.
That's why you have to, and especially in Persona's case, rely on the arcs of everyone else.
Yeah, I mean, Joker's
And,
situation certainly changed, but
but his personality really.
yeah, you can't say he underwent an arc as a character because there was never enough personality there to undergo a change because they
No,
wanted it to be mostly
blank.
you. And that's where I'm saying, even if I dislike the character, I have more
Hmm.
appreciation for a character that undergoes an arc and a transformation
Okay.
than I do just the self insert. I think the self insert works in games where there's a lot of player choice.
Yeah,
Sorry, but when it's a mostly linear experience, I don't think it adds anything.
maybe not as much. All right.
And I know we focus on JRPGs, but I mean, I'll go back. I think Dragon Age Origins
Hmm.
is still the best Dragon Age
It is.
because the silent protagonist meant that they didn't have to voice every single line, which meant
So
that they could have more options.
there were a ton of choices in that game, and
It helped, it
it
benefited,
did.
but the core of that game was choices and decisions and things like that.
So you think just so the silent protagonist was good there because it was more choice based
Yeah, because it was in
than
line with
linear story based?
with the core philosophy of the game, which was to make player choices have divergence on the core plot.
Yeah.
Whereas in something like Persona, it's more like a movie or a TV show or whatever. It's a more linear form of storytelling
Okay.
in terms of its core plot. So having the silent protagonist just doesn't add anything to the experience. And I think
Oh,
it's a mild detriment given how much personality there is to Joker to not be able
or
to
there.
go all the way and have that complete arc.
Okay. I can see it in that case. It's
And it's the same. I use Joker, but it's the same in 4 and 3. And I think of games
it
like
is.
Suikoden or Chrono Trigger. It's like you just have these silent protagonists, and I don't feel much for them because they're supposed to be a self-insert, but they don't feel reflective of who I am.
I don't know.
So
It never stood out as bugging me. I don't know if the reliance on other characters made up for it or something, but it never bothered me. And Chrono Trigger, I didn't even notice. It just felt natural, like he was like a silent, stoic hero. And the silent protagonist bit just, I didn't even notice that he was for a while, honestly.
and
So maybe it just has to be done right.
it's more about lost potential than it is necessarily bad on its own.
I'll give you that. There's, but
You're missing out on not only adding
on what
another
could be.
potentially quality arc to your game, it's this main central character. It's the most important character to the story.
Yeah.
So
So it's just lost potential, you think?
yeah, it's not so much that I think it like ruins the experience or drags down the experience. It's just it could be that much better by having an actual. Because
Or
when I do think about
on
the
the.
characters that I like,
Mhm.
the main characters that I like, they're never the silent protagonists. It's characters like
No,
Luke,
that they
Luke Von
wouldn't be.
Fabre from Tales of the Abyss, who undergoes a just radical character arc,
Yeah.
and it's like I want to see more of that.
No, it's like your favorite characters never would be but your least favorite characters, the ones that you absolutely hate, I feel like are never going to be those silent protagonists either. Yeah, you're losing the potential of what could be awesome, but you're also kind of giving up that risk of putting in a bad arc or giving them this shitty, non-fitting personality.
True, but personally, I'm always of the opinion that it's better to have
Better to take
something
a
that
risk.
is liked by some than loved by all. Or sorry, loved by some than liked by all. I got those
Yeah.
backwards. Because it's like with music, everybody has different taste in music.
Yeah.
I think taste in music is the most diverse of any taste
Okay.
in art. But if you just make something that appeals to, like, that's listenable, then it
Mhm.
appeals to a lot of people, but nobody loves it. It's only
Yeah.
because people love something or other people hate something that other people can love something because that means it's appealing to specific things and opting not to appeal to others.
Okay.
It's kind of like, again, just
No,
to
I mean,
put it in the shittiest of RPG terms, if you have 10 stats and you distribute them evenly, you get somebody who's mediocre at everything.
mhm,
But if you distribute like 10 points into strength, then you're really, really strong, but not everybody, wants that. Not
yeah,
everybody's happy with that.
yeah, that's true.
So that's my point. It's like, yeah, if silent protagonists are generally inoffensive, but they're also just missing out on the potential to take things to new heights.
They do. I
And
can't argue that because that's completely true.
even if I don't necessarily like what they end up doing with a main character, unless the game is god awful, I can usually still play it in spite of that.
Okay.
And I'd rather them take that risk, which is something I get the feeling we're going to get into later with one of your questions,
You think?
than just stay comfortable in something that's inoffensive.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I don't really know what a proper response is to that because I get your point, and
I mean that's fine. It's
m-
agree or
most of
disagree. It's just my opinion.
most of the time, I agree, but there are times I don't.
That's how
But
opinions work. I'm okay with that.
but in general, short answer, I don't mind them if they're done right or if I feel like they fit, but generally I do prefer the ones that have generally I prefer the ones that have their own personality, like you're saying. But silence ones that are good, that are fit, I am okay with.
Yeah, I'm not repeating. I'm not summarizing my fucking thoughts. You can go back and listen to it again. Fuck it. Not
Okay.
you, the person who's not actually listening to this.
Hey.
So
Yeah.
future me. Fuck you, future me.
What an ass.
Hate that guy.
That's fine. I hate that guy too.
All right. So let's your question.
So mine kind of applies to games in general, but there's a specific JRPG that I'm thinking about, which is licensed games in general. Do you like, dislike, or indifferent to start with?
Well, I want you to bring up the game in general because if it's what I think it is, my answer that I've come up with is very specific to that.
The one that I'm thinking of is Fairy Tail.
Mm-hmm.
There are a couple other ones that come to mind too. Dragon Ball Kakarot and the Avengers also come to mind when thinking of licensed games.
So
But
here's why my answer is very specific to this.
okay,
I very heavily have a concern with this. I have no problem with it in theory.
okay,
In practice, though,
okay.
in Japan, the manga industry, the light novel industry, and the anime industry are all very closely connected.
Yeah,
You could even think of them as three branches of ultimately the same thing.
yeah.
And this has become problematic because in anime, there's actually very little original anime being made.
It's all just things from
It's almost
existing manga.
yeah, it's almost always an adaptation of an existing manga or light novel because what happens is they make the manga or light novel
It gets popular, and then they
and
make an anime of it.
and then it gets a certain degree of popularity and then they make an anime on it. But the point of the anime is almost never to stand on its own as an art form. It's essentially a glorified advertisement for the light
To
novels,
okay,
which is why very few anime actually ever get an actual ending
okay,
because it's not about seeing a show through to the end. It's about giving you just enough of a taste that you go and pick up the source material.
that makes sense.
And what worries me, and it's in part because making an anime is so expensive.
Hmm.
It's incredibly expensive. So they want to do something that they know has a chance of returning the profits.
Yeah.
Obviously, you never know 100%, but it comes back to risk reduction.
Okay.
Let's take something that already has a degree of popularity and see if we can't bank off of it.
Milk a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So, what I fear the potential exists for this type of thing
Hmm.
is that the video games get dragged into that triad
Yeah.
and become another wing where it's so expensive to make a game that we'll just stick an existing anime property on it.
Hmm.
And there's very few original games anymore because they're all just whatever shonen flavor of the week is the
It's
RPG.
interesting. It's interesting you actually put it that way because that's a fair bit of what Fairy Tail did is not really have a solid start or ending because it didn't have that full ending because I think it was just like you said, encouraging you to read or watch the original or relying on the original. So
Yeah.
yeah, like you were saying with those, bunches of, anime, didn't really have a solid ending.
Well, and it's another perfect example in more ways than one of what I'm afraid of because yeah, it doesn't it from what I understand, it just kind of leaps around in terms of arcs
Hmm.
and it just more or less tells the story of the show or manga,
Yeah.
but very very truncated for a game and
Yeah.
that I miss in anime I miss original experiences that were designed to have a beginning, middle, and end in that art form.
Yeah.
And in games, there's already a dirge of new IPs and products. I mean, I've mentioned that several times. Like Falcom hasn't made anything that isn't Trails or Ys in over a decade.
Yeah.
Name one franchise in the JRPGs that isn't Xenoblade that has been remotely popular that began post, like in the PS1 era,
Okay. Yeah.
that isn't dead today, like Suikoden is dead.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a genre that very much relies on niche sales.
Hmm.
And I'm afraid that if this becomes a thing, it will be too easy to, well, it costs a lot of money to make a game, so let's just stick a name onto it that we know is already going to sell, and you end up in the same position the anime is in now.
Okay.
So, in theory, I don't have a problem with it. I think that if the game is great, then it can be great for the fans to just play through it in a new light, whatever. But I worry about the impact it could have on the originality and feasibility of the industry.
Okay. I like it. That's more serious than I was expecting. More of a downer than I was, going for. But a serious thought, actually. I like it. But I've noticed with just licensed material in general that they're either always, pretty much always, either a cash grab, like you said, basically a glorified ad, or something that the creator actually has a passion for. They like the original material so much that they want to spread it to something else. And what weirded me out about Fairy Tail is that it's somehow both. And because clearly it's felt like a cash grab. They did a poll, what anime series should we make a game of? And that one won, so they did it.
I wonder what other
The
options were in the pool.
I don't remember. There was like three or four options. I don't remember what all they
I just
were.
didn't know there was a poll, so like this is news to me. Now I'm like, oh what?
Yeah, it was a poll. They said, here's 4 or 5 choices. What should we make a game of? And Fairy Tale was the most voted.
And that was,
The
of course, a Japanese poll, which Westerners
of
were
course.
not allowed in.
The DLC for that game is ridiculously and stupidly expensive, and
Is
it's
it?
all yeah. The
Okay.
costumes are like $4 a piece, and then DLC playable characters are 20 fucking dollars. Just ridiculous because I wanted one
Good
until I
God.
realized it was 20 fucking bucks. Yeah, and like you were saying, there's no solid beginning or even worse end because it kind of feels like we already either expect you to know this or now
Go
that
on.
you've done this, go do the real thing. So it felt like that kind of cash grabby, you know, shit thing. We're here for money, but at the same time, they got most of the original cast to come back and replay their same characters because they wanted to make it feel right. They got the original writer of the manga involved to help it feel right. So there was some degree of
Care.
care put into this to make it be right, be more than just a shitty cash grab, which is
Well, and
it conflicts me whether I should like, praise them for the work that they did or, you know, or not because of we did this for money, clearly. So and it makes me just think of these other ones that are clearly a cash grab, like the Avengers game that admittedly I haven't played yet and probably never will, but is clearly just 100% cash grab.
mm,
So I'm trying to like commend Fairy Tail for putting in some of that effort,
and
but can I?
I think you can. I just think it's about context. It's that, again, it comes back to like with anime. There's some anime that are absolutely gorgeous and clearly had a lot of work put into them, but they still
Hmm.
only tell 1/10 of a story.
Yeah.
It still does not stand on its own separate of the source material.
Hmm.
And that to me is absolutely what an adaptation should ultimately be able to do.
Okay.
So like it's a success in every respect except that it can't stand on its own. And I think
Okay.
that's a fair complaint.
Yeah.
If they'd gone the whole mile and adapted the whole thing, if they told a new story that managed to capture, the same spirit,
Hmm.
whatever, the point is, if it was able to just stand on its own,
Then it would be better.
yeah.
Because
And
that
that,
was a complaint that I had with Fairy Tail, is it starts in the middle and it ends just a little bit farther, kind of still in the middle, or closer to the end, but not the end. It clearly doesn't stand on its own. It requires everything else, like you're saying.
and that's where, to me, I can't, you know, give it like a full pass for that personally, but everybody has their own metrics.
Hmm.
But that's
All
the
right.
thing with opinions is sometimes you can't condense them into nice, easy,
Easy 1 or 2 word
yeah, one or two sentence
snippets.
snippets. Sometimes they're just complicated and messy.
Yeah. Okay. Um, Another simple question, still on the same topic.
Hmm.
Do you prefer an original story, or would you prefer it to follow the story of the source material? Even if it includes the whole story of the source material, which would you
Are we
personally
are we
prefer?
talking irrespective of quality?
Yes,
Because the problem with saying an original story is a lot of the times the original stories are absolutely god awful.
they are. Now, strictly from a design choice without quality of writing in mind.
I like an original story because I can think of specifically in games. Chronicles of Riddick.
Oh, that was a great game.
Yeah, that was actually a good game. It told its own story. It had the character from the movie, and it was able to do its own thing. That's an example of something that just stood on its own.
Yeah,
And
it's a,
the sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say that is a great example. The problem I've noticed with a lot of stand on its own stories is a lot of them still, even though it is an original story, they still require some degree of existing knowledge.
Yeah, because you usually get I can't remember what it is now, but I swear there was some game that was like you just make yourself insert silent protagonist,
Mhm.
and then he goes on a journey with all the characters. Oh, one of the
Oh,
Tales games did that too.
no, I was thinking of that game earlier today, and I can't believe I forgot about that when we were talking about silent protagonists.
There are a
Uh,
couple of them that do that apparently.
yeah,
Where
fucking yeah,
Tales had an entire spin-off franchise that was just that: make your silent self-insert protagonist, and then they go on an adventure with all the characters from the Tales game.
yeah, fucking White Knight Chronicles. You spend all this time making your own silent protagonist, and then the whole game he just stands there in the fucking background. He has no bearing on the story whatsoever.
Oh,
I don't even I don't even use him in my party because
it's
that
like
game.
a Fire Emblem,
No,
Awakening, or the Game Boy one, where it's like you're the strategist.
no, no, it is not like that. It's even worse than that because the way that game did is it had a single player story and it had this like online co-op whatever mode.
Yeah.
So you'd use your main character, your silent protagonist character was your self-insert in that multiplayer mode.
Hmm.
And he was just there in the story mode. He didn't say a single word. He didn't impact the story in any way. He was completely 100% background. The main character of the story, not him. The side character of the story, not him. The supporting best friend, not him. Your silent protagonist was, you know, decoration.
I mean,
It was all.
like that just reminds me a lot of the strategist in Fire Emblem.
See, but that one he was a strategist at least. He was.
Well,
I mean, I didn't play it, but
that's what if you played it, I think you'd appreciate more what I'm saying.
okay.
Awakening, there's like not much, but there's room for argument. But the one that was just released is Fire Emblem in the West. I don't like the series enough to care what its sub name
Mm,
was.
yeah.
That was just like, why the fuck are you here? Why did they do this? Why did they just why?
Yeah, and that's what White Knight Chronicles felt like too. Is
It's not
I
even
didn't.
he's not even a unit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
he's not a
Yeah.
unit. I don't even think he has a fucking character portrait. And it's
Oh,
just
okay.
is the most like what the fuck why?
Yeah, because in White Knight Chronicles, it was still a full unit you could control in battle like everyone else. They had their own fucking leveling system and skills and everything else, but there was nothing else to them. So I didn't even use them in my party or anything. I just played as the main character of the story was my main character now, and this guy who I just spent 20 minutes building, forget about him.
Yeah. So
I mean that's crazy off topic, and I don't know how we got there, but
if I was actually going to take us back.
okay.
If the again, this is why I asked the quality of the writing, because if the game is nothing more than be a self-insert so you can fillet yourself by going on the adventures with all these characters you love,
Hmm.
fuck off. But if you can
See
tell an original story using those characters in a new setting that's still compelling
that? Yeah.
and better suits the format that you're
Okay.
doing, that better suits a video game format,
Okay.
then I think it benefits from it because A, you don't already know what's going to happen,
Hmm.
and it still gives you what you want from an adaptation, which is to see more with these characters that you like in this setting that you like, with this, atmosphere that you like.
Okay. I think I agree. I mean, I feel like that requires more work and it
It
will
it
require better writing
it
because you have to
does.
like
That's
you have to reintroduce all those characters in a way.
Yeah, that doesn't feel like you're self-relating.
Yeah.
And that's why I said irrespective of quality, because I do
Mhm.
absolutely think it's easier to just fuck it, we're going to adapt Dragon Ball Z and we're just gonna do it fucking arc by arc
It's a,
across
and
3 games.
even speaking of Dragon Ball Z, I can think of two very distinct story styles between Xenoverse and Kakarot. Kakarot was a straight copy of the TV show, straight 100% copy.
Kakarot to me
And
always seemed like the spiritual successor to the Legacy of Goku games.
you know what, it might be actually. I haven't played those in forever, so I don't quite remember how they worked, but
That,
I
that
think you're right.
those are the last ones I played, and that's what I'm saying. Legacy of Goku 1 was just a straight adaptation through to the Frieza arc.
Yeah, yeah,
Two
I remember
two
those
was the
now.
whole Cell arc, and then 3 was the Buu arc,
And
and they
that's
were just like dead adaptations, like dead on, like nothing.
and 99% of what Kakarot was, yeah, that's what it was. You played as Goku and Gohan and all them, and you just did the story.
How long
Whereas
did it go? Just out of curiosity.
it was like 60 hours or something. It was pretty long.
Holy shit, Shinola! So they just covered the whole show.
Yeah, they covered the whole show from fucking Saiyan arc all the way through the booze.
Holy shit!
I mean, there were some side quests and some other shits thrown in, but yeah, it was long.
Jesus. Okay.
But I'm comparing that to Xenoverse, which did the make your own character, be a self-insert, fuck along with them on their journey, but it gave you some sort of like narrative fuckery with it, where you were like, there was a bad guy with a time machine and he was going to fuck shit up, and you had to go in with your time machine and like fix it. So you would still be playing through all the same battles and arcs and everything that you already know.
It was a thinly veiled framing device.
It was, that's all it was, but there was narrative fuckery around with it to make it play the same story but not feel like I'm playing the same story,
Yeah.
which I like as a middle ground. Because I think that one in particular works best for pre-existing fans because they still get some element of newness, but also it's something that they're familiar with. For people who have no idea what they're doing, they still get the original story. Whereas Kakarot, I'll be honest, for me, it was boring as fuck because I already know the story. 15 hours in, I already know what the next 45 is going to be.
Yeah. That's why I
And it was
have
boring as fuck.
that's why I don't particularly care for the straight adaptation route.
And I don't, it's like, I want to say I don't either, but I liked it in Fairy Tail, except that they did a really shitty job telling a story, I'll be. But I like the fact that it was direct and honest to the source.
And which is where I'm saying just had it been as on it, still faithful because it had the same writer, let's say,
It did.
and it was just telling a side story
Hmm.
that was, just as good as the rest of it, would you have had any problem with it?
No,
And I just think that
but
that's,
I already know it. So I already know the characters, so if it was a side story, I'd already know enough going into it.
and I think
Because
that's
there,
fine as long as you present it in a way that is still accessible to, to new people. Because I think one of the benefits of doing a side story is that it
mm,
doesn't have to have you expect all this foreknowledge. Because it doesn't have to be a side story that necessarily ties into the main plot.
yeah,
Because that's never gonna work. The Japos keep trying it with shit. It didn't work in Tokyo Xanadu. It doesn't work in Tokyo Mirage Sessions. It just stop trying to add post content that ties into the main game. It never fucking works.
no, the concern that I'm having is there was a there was a One Piece game a while back that I've kind of almost wanted to watch that show, and I thought maybe I'll try this game and see if I like it. But then I realized I'm going to start this game and know who no one is, or anything that's going on, or anything, because it's an original story. And that, I feel like that scares off some people from potentially playing it like it did for me in that, that one.
See,
Because,
I feel like it'd be the opposite because, like you said, Fairy Tail doesn't even start at the beginning.
I know Fairy Tail was not for if Fairy Tail started at the beginning, but it doesn't. And I'm not even including that because I know that scares away non-existing fans.
And to me,
But
like a way to introduce characters in a way that's not going to, that, and this is where the biggest hurdle honestly is with doing an original story is that it can't impact the original plot.
no, it has to
So
be 100% self-contained,
yeah, usually this is where you introduce some new characters,
and then yeah,
but that also runs the risk of being self-insert filleting.
hmm
So it's definitely a tight balancing act. But
okay,
I really don't think that there's anything keeping you from. Because let's be honest, dude, like shonen characters aren't the most deep, complex fucking characters.
no, no, they're not.
So it's not like you can't just introduce the fucking character and then figure out who they are within a few minutes just by their writing anyway, because that's how you fucking figure out who a character is.
That is true. That is true.
It's not like you're diving in halfway through some complex story like, well, what the fuck? Oh no, you dude, you don't understand. This isn't like Gurren Lagann where if you miss the fucking childhood arc with Simon, you're not going to appreciate his adulthood arc.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that is true. They're not exactly deep and super developed.
So you can usually do just fine by introducing them as you
Oh,
would any other game.
okay. All right.
Because again, I think if people see the character and they like the character, then they just get more interested in wanting to know their backstory.
Okay. And you think then that's where they would
Yeah, then
move
go,
from that side story to the original?
yeah, like,
Okay.
oh, okay, I got a chance to experience these characters in a different medium, in a place where I didn't have to know everything about it going in, and it
hmm
was just a self-contained story. But hey, I really liked all these characters. I'd like to go read more,
Yeah. And no, I agree. And I think when it's done best, that is,
as opposed to, wow, that game was pretty good. Now let's go watch the show. Oh, it's the same thing.
it's the exact same thing. Yeah. No, I agree. I like self-contained. I think if it's just done right or done well.
Yeah, it's just
But
definitely the harder path to take.
I was gonna say I just feel like it is much harder to do well, especially when the source material is solid.
Yeah, and that's why I started right from the start. Are we talking about quality?
Mm,
Because I knew, 100%. It's the
that
harder
that's
path.
yeah okay.
But it's like movies and books. I've
Yeah.
read books and then watched the movie, or I've
Mm.
watched the movie and then read the book. Either way, where it's like, why did they even make this? Not because it was bad, but just because it added absolutely nothing to the original experience. But
Because
then,
some people aren't gonna read.
but then you look at something like Burning,
Hmm
where it's a 2.5 hour movie based on like a 15-page short story.
Is it really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, and they're radically different, but they still capture the same spirit,
Feeling. Okay.
and that is phenomenal because it ties back to that whole each one stands on its own.
Mm.
It they both have a vision and manage to capture the thing. The movie came afterwards, so the movie manages to capture the
The
essence of what made the story so compelling while still
without
clearly having
just
it.
okay.
Yeah, and I don't want to turn this into a movie show, but when we're talking about adaptations,
It,
that's
it, it,
usually
it
the best type of adaptation in my mind.
is one that has the same feeling and the same spirit, but not necessarily a direct copy of the narrative itself.
Or even if it's not the narrative, that injects something into it, because the difference between film and books, even mangas, manga is a static image,
Yeah.
whereas an anime things can move and have motion, and how you frame that motion can add so much to the story and the experience.
Okay.
assuming you get somebody with, a unique
The
sense of
skill to do it.
style and yeah, to pull it off.
Okay. Okay.
And that's where I think having an original story for a video game can help, because video game stories, structure wise, tend to be
Or
different from anime stories.
yeah,
So rather than trying to beat something to, rather than try to beat a square block to fit a circular hole,
you just make a new block.
yeah, it can be easier to make a new block borrowing elements of the old block.
Okay. No, I like that idea. I like that thought of the same idea and spirit, but being its own kind of idea.
Yeah, and it's very hard to do. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
I will not pretend for a second that this is the easy road. But
but ultimately it's the better road if done right.
yeah, and that's where it comes back to what I was saying earlier about risk.
Hmm.
You can take the safe road and make whatever vanilla bits you want and make back your money, but
And it's
nobody's
probably
going to love you for it.
yeah,
You're going to get a lot of praise, and you might even be the big thing, but nobody is going to be like fanatically in love with you.
no, you're not gonna. You're just gonna be fine.
So
Okay.
that's where I stand on it.
All right. I like your insights, and I actually kind of agree with you on that one. So,
So, yeah,
all
did you
right.
have anything else?
Nothing that comes straight off the top of my, top of my head.
All right. I was gonna
So,
close this out on going over what we're doing, but we're already at an hour.
are we?
So yeah, I'm just gonna throw in one random fun factoid that I was thinking about today,
Love fun
and then
facts.
that'll be how we close it out.
Okay.
Um, just give me 1 second to look up the exact dates on this.
Oh God,
Be,
you're not even ready with your fun fact.
well, I don't know the
All right.
exact dates.
All right. Well, I guess while you're googling, I will do our little catch up for this. So what was it? 2 days ago, you beat Cold Steel 1, and now you're starting Cold Steel 2.
Yeah, I'm about 7 hours in.
So I'll be beating Cold Steel 1 most likely tomorrow, and then I'll be right behind you. I'm in the final dungeon. I like just got into the final dungeon. I haven't even put my party together yet, but I'm inside the dungeon.
Okay, so
Found it?
yeah, the PSP version of Trails in the Sky launched in 2011.
Okay.
Well, when the PC port launched in 2014, 3 years later,
Hmm.
which I pre-ordered it, so I'm not talking out my ass. I actually experienced this.
Okay.
For a few days, there was a bug in the game, or it's not even a bug. Somehow they got Joshua's voice, his like post-battle comments,
Yeah.
mixed up with his Trails in the Sky 2 comments.
Really? No shit.
So I was wondering why, when I played the game, Joshua seemed like this really calm, laid-back guy, but then he'd get into battle and he'd suddenly sound like an edgelord.
Really?
And the reason I bring that up is because Cold Steel or Trails in the Sky 2 didn't actually launch until a year and a half later,
Okay.
in 2015. Which, if you go by the original PSP port, they were working on that game for 4 years, and they had the audio files,
That much earlier?
yeah, ready that much in advance.
Damn.
So
Okay.
I thought that was interesting in terms of like the game development process, that they had already called in Johnny Young Bosch and recorded lines for the second game over a
Even.
year before it actually came out.
Huh. Okay.
So that's my fun little
Your
factoid.
fun, your fun fact for this week.
Yeah.
All right. I like it.
All right. Have a good week, everybody.
Laters.